Good evening, children. My voice is audible. Good evening to all of you. Today I am going to start chapter number 4, that is Age of Industrialization. Children, my voice is audible? Okay, so now let's move to the age of industrialization. Now, in this chapter, firstly we should be aware of the outline of the chapter. The main topics are before the Industrial Revolution. Second point is manual labor and steam power. Third point is industrialization in the colonies. Fourth point is coming up of factories in India. And the next point is the peculiarities of industrial growth and market for goods. Now, before starting this chapter, I would like to tell you that what is the meaning of the word industrialization. Now, this word industrialization means production of goods with the help of machines in factories. The first industrialized nation was Britain. Features are handmade goods, okay. Okay, if I talk about industrialization, now, firstly we should be knowing the meaning of the word industrialization. What is industrialization? Now, in this, production of goods with the help of machines in factories. The first industrialized nation was Britain. Second point is features, handmade goods to machine-made goods in factories. Cottage to factory, large-scale production to started in England in later parts of the 18th century. In course of time, it affected all systems of production. Now, two pictures are shown here. Just watch these pictures carefully. In 1900, artists, writers and publishers glorified machines and technology. Industrialization was welcomed. It was depicted as changing the world, making it modern with rapid technological changes and innovations. The history of industrialization thus became a story of development, and everything associated with it was painted as wonderful, progressive. As you can see, children, two pictures are there in front of your screen. If you look at these two pictures very carefully, both the pictures are glorifying industrialization. Both the pictures are narrating something about industrialization. The first figure, if I talk about the first figure or the first picture, has a goddess-like figure with wings on wheels, leading Britain forward in future. All the symbols of progress of industry such as railway, camera, machines, printing press and floating behind her. The second picture compares. Now if you see the second picture, This second picture compares two magicians, Aladdin representing the past and the Orient world, a modern mechanic representing the present. The first had a magic lamp. If you see, the first picture is having a magic lamp to perform miracles. But the second one brings out miracles with his tools. He builds bridges, ships, towers, and high-rise buildings. The mechanic is glorified. Britain was the first country to industrialize. India, that was under the colonial rule, was also affected by industrialization in Britain. By studying the pattern of industrialization in these two countries, we will find out what industrialization really means, how it affected people's lives, and whether glorification of technology is really right. Now, you can see the heading. The heading is before the Industrial Revolution. Now, what was this? Let's talk about this. See, proto-industrialization, we are going to study. Proto-industrialization means production in 17th century. Artisans worked for merchants to produce goods. Artisans took raw material from merchants for production. Their cottage functioned as a factory. Association of producers, trained craft people maintained control over production, restricted entry of new traders. This period saw the coming of factories. This was just the summarized form. Now let's come to the point. We generally associate industrialization with factory industry, factory production, and factory workers. But even before factories were set up, England and Europe were involved in large scale industrial production for an international market, and this was not based on factories. This phase is referred to by many historians as proto-industrialization. This word proto-industrialization means early form of industry. In the 17th and 18th centuries, merchants from towns were turning to the countryside. This system developed a close relationship between the town and the countryside. Merchants lived in towns, but the work was done in the countryside. A merchant in England bought wool from a wool stapler and carried it to the spinners. The yarn that was spun was taken in following stages of production to weavers, fullers, and finally to dyers. Then finishing was done in London. After that, the export merchant sold the cloth in the international market, and at that time London was popularly called the finishing center. Now children, you can see on your screen that a picture has been shown there, the reasons for the proto-industrialization. Now what were the causes? What were the reasons for proto-industrialization? The first point is the demand for goods was increasing with the acquisition of colonies. In towns, production could not be expanded as there were crafts and guilds which were powerful. These guilds trained their own craftsmen, controlled production, regulated prices, and restricted entry of new people into the trade. Some guilds had monopoly, right to produce and trade in their own goods. The poor peasants and artisans began to work for merchants in the countryside eagerly. They needed extra fund. They needed extra funds and employment for all members of the household. They could work for the merchants and look after their small families. This proto-industrial system was controlled by merchants and the goods were prepared by vast number of workers working within their family and farms. Each merchant employed 20 to 25 workers. They gave financial aid to peasants and artisans to produce for the international market. Now, these were the points. Now, after this, and it simply means that the reason for proto-industrialization was that the laborers or the workers were bound under the merchants to work. Although their percentage, the laborers, their rates were very low, but then also they were fully dependent on the merchant for their livelihood. Now the other picture is flowchart, and this is the flowchart of process of making and selling cloth. The first point is merchant clothier based in towns. Second point, buys wool from a wool stapler, carried it to the spinners. Spinners spin yarn. Then the next stage, spun yarn taken to weavers, fullers, and then to dyers. Finishing done in London. Export merchants sold the cloth in the international market. Now, see, एक ही काम को करने के लिए सिर्फ एक काम को करना है, लेकिन ये कितने स्टेजेस से होकर गुजर रहा है. करीब ये 5 जगहों से जाता था, उसके बाद 6ठी जगह पे जाके या 7वीं जगह से जाके ये इंटरनेशनल मार्केट में चीज़ पहुंच पा रही थी. तो सोचो इस पे जो प्रॉफिट मार्जिन है, जो फ़ायदा हो सकता है, वो काफ़ी कम रहेगा. दूसरी चीज़, जो ये प्रोसेस होगा ये बहुत ज़्यादा महंगा पड़ रहा था. महंगा क्यों पड़ रहा था? आई टेल यू द रीज़न व्हाई इट वाज कॉस्टली. इट वाज कॉस्टली बिकॉज इट वाज बीइंग शिफ्टेड फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अनदर. एक जगह से दूसरी जगह से तीसरी जगह, और ये करीब 4-5 जगह अपनी पोजीशंस चेंज कर रहा था. ये एक शेड के नीचे नहीं होता था. All these activities were not being performed under one shade. So that's why it used to take enough amount of time as well as finance. So finance and time both were extra. So that's why the profit percentage which is going to come, that is also going to lag behind. और जो production होगी, the rate of production is not going to be very high. It is going to be low. So that's why at that time this was the system. So these were the causes that why the factories were needed. Now one more children, you should be knowing that before the Industrial Revolution, 90% of people in Europe lived in the countryside. It means that maximum people were just living near the countryside. So these 2 points I have told you before the Industrial Revolution. I have told you the reasons for proto-industrialization, and I have shown you the flowchart process of making and selling cloth. Now let's come to the point of the coming up of the factory or the coming up of factories. Now in short, if I say, early factories in England came up by the 1730s. First symbol of new era cotton mill. Many factories sprang up in England. A series of inventions took place in the form of carding, twisting, spinning and rolling. These are the points. I am just telling you the summary. Now let's come to the point. A great transformation took place in the system of production with the Industrial Revolution. This was a result of the transition from the domestic system to the factory system. तो अगर हम लोग शॉर्टकट में बात करें तो सीधा मतलब क्या था, जो काम अभी तक घरों में होता था, जो डोमेस्टिक सिस्टम था, जो घरेलू काम था, वो उठ के अब फैक्ट्री सिस्टम में आ गया है. जब फैक्ट्री सिस्टम की हम बात करते हैं तो सिंपली इट मीन्स दैट वी आर गोइंग टू हैव अ फिक्स टाइमिंग, मशीनरी एंड एडवांस टेक्नोलॉजी. Industrialization brought about widespread establishment of factories around which towns and cities developed. The earliest factories in England came up by the 1730s, but it was only in the late 18th century that the number of factories multiplied. England was the hub. England was the main center where maximum factories were starting. The first impact was felt on the cotton industry. Import of raw cotton in Britain rose in 1787 to 22 million pounds as compared to 2.5 million pounds in 1760. मतलब कि करीब 27 ईयर्स में, 27 साल में जो डिमांड बढ़ी थी, इट वॉज नियरली 20 मिलियन पाउंड्स. समझो कितने ज़्यादा का फर्क आ गया. 20 मिलियन पाउंड्स का डिमांड बढ़ गई थी. दिस वॉज ड्यू टू, अब ऐसा क्यों हुआ? वाई द डिमांड हैव इंक्रीज्ड फ्रॉम 2.5 million to 22 million? The cause of this was due to improvement in each step of production process. For example, in carding, twisting, spinning and rolling. All these developments helped in the production of stronger threads and yarn. अब जितने ये सिस्टम थे, जो डेवलपमेंट हुई थी, उससे जो थ्रेड्स बन रहे थे और जो यार्न थे वो काफ़ी मजबूत थे और वो उनका साइज बड़ा होता जा रहा था. The bigger impetus to cotton industry was given by Richard Arkwright. Remember the name? The biggest impetus to cotton industry was given by Richard Arkwright's cotton mill. Now, all parts of production could be carried in the mill itself. अब समझो, एक मिल में ही जो पहले काम 7 अलग अलग जगहों पे हो रहा था, that now that entire work was being done under the same shade. एक छत के नीचे पूरा काम हो जा रहा था. देखो इससे फायदे कितने हुए. आपके जो नंबर ऑफ एम्प्लॉयज होंगे, जो वर्कर्स हैं आपके, आपको वो चाहिए कम, आपका ट्रांसपोर्टेशन में पैसा बचेगा, आपका जो प्रोडक्शन है उसकी स्पीड बढ़ेगी, स्पीडी प्रोडक्शन होगा. तो ये सारे इसके फायदे लग रहे थे. और जब स्पीडी प्रोडक्शन होगा तो आप अपने प्रोडक्ट्स को मार्केट में अधिक से अधिक लॉन्च कर सकते हैं. Now all parts of production could be carried in the mill itself under one roof and one management with the help of new machines. और ये जो पूरे changes हो रहे थे, for these entire changes, machines were the root cause. Machines brought a new era of production. This allowed a more careful supervision over the production process. लेकिन अब जो सुपरविजन का टाइम था, जो ध्यान रखने का टाइम था, जो सुपरवाइजर्स की ड्यूटी थी, वो ज़्यादा बढ़ गई थी. Now it was the entire work should be supervised in a very proper manner because in production process anything could happen. इंडस्ट्रीज में अगर कुछ एक्सीडेंट होता है तो वो बहुत, it can take the lives of hundreds of people. Different parts of Britain saw the growth of different types of manufacturing industries. पूरे ब्रिटेन में अलग अलग जगहों पे कई तरह के manufacturing industries were taking place. Or you can say this Britain turned out to be the hub of manufacturing industries. Colebrookdale was famous for its iron work, the Pennines for wool and cotton manufacturing, and the area around Stoke for potteries. Potteries, you know, where the pots are being made. जहाँ पे हम लोग मिट्टी के बर्तन बनाए जाते हैं. These areas were built due to close proximity to raw materials. ये सब एरिया क्यों बनाई गई थी? क्योंकि यहाँ पे रॉ मटेरियल्स इनको बहुत ज़्यादा प्रोवाइड हो रहा था, यहाँ पे रॉ मटेरियल्स इनको आसानी से मिल जा रहा था. Each area's population grew rapidly as impoverished agricultural workers sought a new life and guaranteed work in the apparently prosperous cities. अब एक क्वेश्चन समझो. जो शहर थे, in the cities, the population was increasing. The cause of this increase in population was because new industries, new manufacturing hubs were opening, and the people of the agricultural field, means the peasants or the other farmers whose lands were very small, or those who were the laborers, they started shifting towards the cities, because in the industries there was more factors of growth. As the cities are going to grow, or as the manufacturing industries are going to proceed further, developments will take place in the cities. In the same manner, these people also, the rural people also, are going to have a guaranteed work in the apparently prosperous cities. Now see, I am using the word prosperous cities. What does it mean? You can see, as good the areas are, जिन शहरों में ज़्यादा इंडस्ट्रीज है, जो ज़्यादा एडवांस है साइंटिफिकली या टेक्नोलॉजिकली, वहाँ और यहाँ के शहर में बहुत फ़र्क है. द बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल यू कैन थिंक अबाउट इज योर Bengaluru. If you see your Bengaluru and Lucknow, you will see the difference. Bengaluru is the hub of IT sector, whereas Lucknow is no such a kind of hub. So this difference could easily be seen. Now, if you see this, how industry was organized, and it is an illustrative comparison. If you see, before, people worked in their own houses in village. That it means domestic system. पहले लोग अपने घरों में ही काम करते थे, उसको हम कहते थे domestic system. अब उसके बाद देखो, after people worked in larger factories in large towns. The factory system, factories were built in the vicinity of raw materials and rivers. अच्छा, अब एक चीज़ पे ध्यान देना. जहाँ पे शहरों में, जहाँ पे फैक्ट्रीज खुल रही थी, उसके पास रिवर्स होती थी. उस फैक्ट्री जहाँ पर भी होती थी, उसके पास नदी होती थी, जो उनका जो क्रूड ऑयल है या जो बेकार चीज़ें हैं, वाटर वगैरह है, वो उसमें जाके मिक्स हो सके. दूसरा, इन द सिटीज़ इनफ रॉ मटेरियल वॉज अवेलेबल. Now, if you see the second picture, skills needed by the workers before, spinning and weaving needed skills and craftsmanship. देखो, जो पहले काम होता था उसके लिए बकायदा स्किल्स चाहिए होती थी, क्राफ्ट्समैनशिप चाहिए होती थी, पूरा काम हाथ से होता था. More scientific work was needed. But if you see the other picture, which is after, factory workers followed set routines of work on big machine involving little skill. पहले मशीनें होती थी, उसमें आपको स्किल चाहिए, उसके लिए आपको कला आनी चाहिए, उसका कैसे उसको रन करना है. लेटर ऑन जब मशीनरी आई तो उसके लिए कोई सिस्टम नहीं था, वो आसान हो गया था. मशीन का सिस्टम बना हुआ है, आप उसको दबाइए, द एंटायर वर्क विल बी फॉलोड. Now, the second picture would be visible on your screen. The second picture tells us how industry was powered. Now, how industry was powered, what does it mean? Now, if you see the picture of before, human, animal and power used. किसी भी काम करने के लिए, किसी भी मशीन को चलाने के लिए इंसान, जानवर और पानी तीनों का इस्तेमाल होता था. लेकिन बाद में क्या हुआ? आफ्टर फैक्ट्रीज पावर्ड बाय लार्ज स्टीम इंजन्स, ह्यूमन, एनिमल और वाटर पावर को रिप्लेस कर दिया था स्टीम इंजन्स ने. एंड these steam engines were very large in size. Now the other picture, if you see, before, not produced on large scale. देखो, पहले जो प्रोडक्शन होता था, it was on a very small scale. Goods sold in local towns, जो आसपास की मार्केट होती थी, those products were sold out at those markets only. क्योंकि प्रोडक्शन कम था, बाहर वो कहीं भेज नहीं सकते. Now, after, what was the impact? Huge amount of goods produced, mass production, goods sold in big cities and exported. अब क्या था कि जो प्रोडक्शन था वो बहुत बड़े लेवल पे हो रहा था. Mass production was taking place and goods could be easily sold in big cities and they can be exported from those areas. Now, let's move to the other point. The pace of industrial change. The pace of industrial change means that what was the speed, in what manner the changes in the industries occurred. Now, if I talk about the most progressive industries in Britain were the cotton and metal industries. Cotton was the leading sector up to the 1840s in the first phase of the industrialization. Now, if I talk about all these points in short, I will say cotton and iron and steel industries were the most dynamic industries. New industries could not displace traditional industries. जो नई नई फैक्ट्रियाँ खुल रही थी वो पुरानी जो परंपराओं से चली आ रही थी फैक्ट्री उनको हटा नहीं पा रही थी. टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस अकर्ड स्लोली. जो टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस आते हैं वो धीरे धीरे आते हैं. आज से 15 साल पहले के मोबाइल देख लो क्वर्ट वाले और अब के फ़ोन देख लो और आज से 5 साल बाद के जो मोबाइल फ़ोन्स होंगे. यू कैन सी द टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट इज steam engine invented by James Watt had no buyers for years. See the drastic thing. The steam engine was created by James Watt, but for the beginning few years, no purchaser was there. Nobody was buying the steam engines. New technologies were slow to be accepted. जो नई टेक्नोलॉजी थी उससे लोग धीरे धीरे एक्सेप्ट कर रहे थे. Now, the next point is, देखो अब टेक्नोलॉजी चेंज होती है तो उसमें कुछ और चेंजेस आएंगे. With the expansion of railways in England from the 1840s, the demand for iron and steel increased rapidly. Britain was exporting by the year 1873. By 1873, Britain was exporting iron and steel worth about 7 pounds, double the value of its cotton export. कॉटन के मुकाबले 2 गुना प्रोडक्शन ज़्यादा था. एक्सपोर्ट ये 77 मिलियन पाउंड उस समय एक्सपोर्ट हो रहा था. Now that was the difference. The new industries could not easily displace traditional industries. Less than 20% of the total workforce was employed in technologically advanced industrial sector even at the end of the 19th century. अब सोचो कितने आश्चर्य की बात है कि जब 19th सेंचुरी ख़त्म हो रही थी तब उस समय 20% लोग भी टेक्नोलॉजिकली एडवांस इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर में नहीं थे. मतलब 20% से भी कम लोग थे. एंड आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द एंड ऑफ द 19th century. The pace of change in the traditional industries was not set by steam-powered cotton or metal industries. Small innovations were the basis of growth in many non-mechanized sectors such as food, processing, tanning, pottery, glasswork and furniture making. टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस अकर्ड स्लोली. देखो टेक्नोलॉजी से जितने रिलेटेड चेंजेस होते हैं वो धीरे धीरे आते हैं. न्यू टेक्नोलॉजी वॉज एक्सपेंसिव एंड इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट्स वर कॉशियस अबाउट यूजिंग इट. देखो कोई भी नई चीज़ मार्केट में आती है तो उसके दाम बहुत ज़्यादा होते हैं और जो भी उसका परचेज़र होता है चाहे वो इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट हो. जब हम कोई नई चीज़ खरीदते हैं तो किसी महंगी चीज़ को खरीदने से पहले हम 10 बार सोचते हैं, 10 बार उसका एनालिसिस करते हैं. then we purchase that product. Just think about the industrialists. If they are going to take any kind of advanced step, then how much confused or how much they would be in a dilemma that whether to do or not to do. Small innovations, the machines often broke down and repair was costly. देखो कई कमियां आती हैं, मशीन्स आप ले तो आते हैं लेकिन किसी कारणवश if that machine gets broke down and the repairing used to be too costly, they were not as effective as inventors and manufacturer claimed. For example, James Watt improved the steam engine produced by Newcomen and patented the new engine in 1781. His industrialist friend Matthew Boulton manufactured the new model, but for years he could not find no buyers. शुरुआत में सोचो इतनी अच्छी मशीन बनी लेकिन कई सालों तक उसके कोई खरीदार नहीं मिले. By the beginning of the 19th century, there were only 321 steam engines all over the England. Of these, 80 were in the cotton industries. अब सोचो 321 में से 80 machines were in the cotton industries, 9 in wool and the rest in mining. और जितनी भी बची करीब 240 they were in the mining, canal and iron works. Therefore, even the most powerful technology that enhanced the productivity of labor was slow to be accepted by the industrialists. जब बड़े बड़े इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट इस चीज को एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर पा रहे थे. Just think, at that time, the big business tycoons, when they were not in a condition to take the risk, then what about the other people? Now, 2 points I would like to say. First one, as you can see, the famous factory towns during the Industrial Revolution. Now, the first name is Colebrookdale. Colebrookdale was famous for its iron work. The site was developed by Abraham Derby, who recognized the potential of the location. It lay close to the river Cbse and had iron mines close by and so-called received raw materials with ease. यहाँ पे जो raw materials थे वो बड़ी आसानी से मिल जा रहे थे. Abraham Derby devised a way of smelting iron by using coke. This moved the iron industry from the rapidly vanishing woodlands of the south of England, where the heat was supplied by charcoal, to the Midlands, where coal was plentiful. पहले इसका इस्तेमाल नहीं पता था. जब कोयले के बारे में जानकारी हुई, so now it was enough, and now the new technologies were taking place. The second name is Saltaire. Sir Titus Salt was a wealthy mill owner. This person, Titus Salt, was a wealthy mill owner in Bradford. Over a period of time, he realized that the working conditions in the city were so poor that workers were unable to function properly. Many of the workers were ill. तो पहले की जो फैक्ट्रीज थी या जो कंडीशंस थी वर्किंग की, they were too difficult. वहाँ पे इतनी दिक्कत हो रही थी कि जो वर्कर्स थे वो मरते जा रहे थे और उनकी जो मौत हो रही थी वो समय से पहले हो जा रही थी. किस कारण? बीमारियों की वजह से. जैसे पहले कॉटन इंडस्ट्रीज होती थी, रुई बनती थी, तो रुई मशीन्स की खासियत क्या थी? जैसे इंडिया में भी पहले बहुत सारी कॉटन मिल्स हुआ करती थी. The biggest problem was several people died, several workers died, early death due to TB, that is tuberculosis. क्योंकि जब आप सांस लेते हैं तो आप जब कॉटन मिल में काम कर रहे हैं, then you inhale the cotton also, and it is going to create problem for you. Salt chose to build a new factory. अब सॉल्ट ने सोचा कि मुझे एक नई फैक्ट्री बनानी चाहिए. As saltair, he built a massive mill which could perform all the necessary functions in processing Esplau wool. He not only built a mill but a few township for his workers to live in. देखिए सबसे अच्छी बात कहते हैं सॉल्टेयर की, इन्होंने मिल्स तो खोली, फैक्ट्रीज तो खोली, लेकिन उनके साथ ही उन्होंने जगह भी खोल दी, उसके साथ टाउनशिप भी क्रिएट किया. मतलब जैसे यहाँ पे फैक्ट्री है और यहाँ पे रहने के लिए लोगों के घर भी बनाए. इसका हम अच्छा एग्जाम्पल एक देख सकते हैं, जमशेदजी टाटा नगर, झारखंड से, जो कि हमारे पहले बिहार में पड़ता था. जमशेदजी टाटा नगर इज द बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल. जहाँ पर भी फैक्ट्रीज है उसी के पास उनकी टाउनशिप है. देयर द वर्कर्स आर लिविंग. लखनऊ में अगर इफ यू थिंक अबाउट, देन यू वुड हैव हर्ड द नेम ऑफ HAL, हिंदुस्तान एरोनॉटिक्स लिमिटेड. ठीक है, वहाँ पे द फैक्ट्री HAL की पूरी फैक्ट्री है. और इन द सेम कैंपस दे हैव बीन प्रोवाइडेड टाउनशिप ऑल्सो. द रोड्स वर वाइड, the houses not crammed on top of each other. Saltair had better drainage system and better hygiene facilities. 2 points पे ध्यान देना. The biggest problem, जो सबसे अधिक बीमारियां फैलती हैं, that is due to improper drainage system and hygiene facilities than most other cities and towns. If I talk about Lucknow and Kanpur, two places are there, two cities are there, Lucknow and Kanpur. Which one is polluted? In which city we are having more pollution? Tell me the answer, children. Which city is having more pollution? Lucknow or Kanpur? I'm waiting for your answer. Yes, send me the answer fast. Okay, children, the answer which you have sent, the Lucknow is more populated, your answer is totally wrong. The more polluted city is Kanpur. Why Kanpur? I am telling the cause also. Because in Kanpur we are having the maximum industries. जो leather work होता है, चमड़े का जो leather work होता है, that is maximum in Kanpur. कानपुर की जो नदियाँ हैं, the river that are more polluted. यहाँ पे फैक्ट्रीज हमारी ज़्यादा होती हैं. लखनऊ में व्हीकल्स ज़्यादा हैं, लेकिन कानपुर इज स्मॉल बट इट इज़ हैविंग इनफ नंबर ऑफ स्मॉल इंडस्ट्रीज. ओके, वन गर्ल हैज आस्क्ड मी द क्वेश्चन, प्रिया यादव. आई हैव सेंट यू द आंसर. यू हैव आस्क्ड मी हु आर फुलर. फुलर इज अ पर्सन हु गैदर्स क्लॉथ बाय प्लीटिंग. सी द आंसर now. The other point is, now let's introduce about cotton gin. Cotton gin was a simple machine. Now I would like to introduce about cotton gin, which was Whitney's cotton gin. Now what was it? Now as you can see the picture, cotton gin. Cotton gin was a simple machine which pressed out seeds from the cotton fibers quickly. This was a slow and cumbersome process earlier. पहले रुई को साफ करने के लिए ये सिस्टम लगाया जाता था, इस टाइप की मशीन का इस्तेमाल किया जाता था. लेकिन इसमें क्या होता था, दिस मशीन वॉज वेरी मच टाइम टेकिंग, और एंड इफ यू सी द राइट हैंड साइड, वहाँ पे एक हैंडल टाइप का बना है, आप उससे उसको घुमाते जाइए, आप उससे उसको घुमाते जाइए, तब आपका वो मशीन रन करेगी. इन द सेम मैनर यू वुड हैव सीन द सिविंग मशीन, सिलाई मशीन देखी होगी, जो आपके घर में इस्तेमाल होती है वो हाथ से आपको चलानी होती है, और जो शॉप्स में होती है वो ऑटोमेटिक होती है, वो पैरों से चलती है, और उसमें वो इंजन से भी काम कर जाती है. सो दैट इज द डिफरेंस. So I've just shown you the picture of cotton gin. Now let's talk about few questions. Short MCQ. Now let's talk about the multiple choice questions. The question is visible on your screen. Just see to it. Okay, my first question: who produced a popular music book that had a picture on the cover, page announcing the dawn of the century? Options are E.T. Paul, James Watt, Matthew Bolton, Newcomen. Okay, Snigdha and Siddhant have already given the answer. Good for giving the answers. Okay, yes, correct answer given by these candidates. Snigdha, Siddhant, Priya. Good. The answer is right. E.T. Paul. Now, the answer is visible, and other children also try to give the answers. We are having 3-4 more questions. Now, I am moving to the second question. The second question is, in Victorian Britain, second question, in Victorian Britain, the aristocrats and the elite preferred handmade goods because option 1, they were cheap, option 2, they were made of better material, option C, they could be easily obtained, option D, they symbolized refinement and class. Yes, children, tell me the answer for this question. I have mentioned the question. I am waiting for your answer. Okay, the answer given, only one person, 2 people have given the answer. Okay, good children. Yes, the correct answer is option D. They symbolized refinement and class. Very good children, your answer is totally correct. Now let's move to the third question. For whom did poor peasants and artisans in the English countryside begin working? I think after a second, question number 3 would be visible. Till the time I am reading the question, for whom did poor peasants and artisans in the English countryside begin working? Irish, Indians, merchants, or foreigners? Okay, Aryan Shaw is also there. Good, Aryan. Okay. Now let's move to the answer. The correct answer is option C, merchants. Very good, children. The answer is correct. Now, let's move the last question of today. The last question is, which of the following group of industries were the dynamic industries in England during its earliest phase of industrialization? Option A. Question would be visible on your screen in a short span of time. Till the time now it's visible. Option A, cotton and silk. Option B, cotton and metals. Option C, silk and footwear. Option D, footwear and glass. Now children, shoot up your answer before the time shoots up. Okay. The answer for this question is cotton and metals. Because at that time, maximum industries were there of metal. Now, let's move to the other question. The last question for today. The question is, what did British and Indian manufacturers usually printed on advertisements of several products to increase their sales? Option A, picture of food and drinks. Option B, images of Indian deities. Option D, images of the Indian cloths. And option D, images of Indian farmers. Send your answer fast, children. Images of deities. Okay. It means option B you are talking about. Now, the correct answer for this question is images of Indian deities. Yes, correct answer is option B. So, children, that much for today. We'll be meeting in the next class with the remaining part of the chapter.